Okay, guys, we're gonna go to get started. I think there'll be some people kind of trickling in as we go. So thank you guys for tuning in. Of course, if you don't know me, my name is Deontay Copeland. I'm the CEO, Executive Director of the National High School Basketball Association. And these ladies at the top, introduce yourselves.
Hey everybody, my name is Sheldon, I'm an intern here. It's nice to see everybody again. Happy New Year.
I'm Sydney, I'm also an intern. It's good to have y'all back, and I'm excited to see what these next couple months bring.
And I am Kennedy Jones, another one of the interns. Happy 2021 to everybody, and thanks for joining.
Well, we have definitely glad to be back for this upcoming year. We got some great things planned for this upcoming year. We have a special speaker on today. His name is Barrington Huntley. He is the Assistant Director of Outreach and Partnerships for the NCAA. So definitely thank you for joining us. For those on the screen, make sure you got your cameras on. Also make sure you get your cameras on, your screen on mute if you're not speaking, so we have to drown out the noise. Also, if you have any questions or anything, please submit via chat to Sydney so we can answer your questions during the Q&A session. Also, if you have social media, make sure you like our pages. Facebook at the National High School Basketball Association, Instagram NHSBA 06, Twitter the NHSBA, and YouTube the NHSBA. So Barrington, again, thanks for being here, man. So my first question for you is, can you explain your role with NCAA?
Yeah. So I've been with the NCAA now about 3.5 years. I also started as an intern a little while back. Got the opportunity to work a little bit in what's called academic and membership affairs. That's going to be mostly like the recruiting, some of the transfer stuff, a lot of stuff that you see there. And then this role came up for me and was really a great opportunity for me to give back. I'm a former student athlete, grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, played college football at New Mexico State University, and having the opportunity to give back in a role that allows me to connect with high school administrators, high school coaches, high school students and parents in order to make sure that they understand all of the requirements that will allow them to be eligible and be able to receive that scholarship, be able to play and compete in that first year. So in my role, it's an Assistant Director of Outreach and Strategic Partnerships with the Eligibility Center. What I do is go into, connect with those people that I was just talking about earlier, those parents, those students, those administrators, and those coaches, really connecting with them in Georgia, Florida, and then really even the whole South. That's the region that I'm responsible for. So it's a tremendous opportunity for me. Obviously with COVID being what it is right now, I can't be on the road. I can't, have that face-to-face kind of communication and interaction that I really, really enjoy. But hopefully there's a vaccine out. Hopefully, we can get back to normal times, sometime in 2021.
Awesome. So you kind of touched a little bit on my next question. I wanted to know just like what a regular day for you looks like post-COVID and pre-COVID. So
pre-COVID, I actually started this particular role about a year ago. So I was, we were really trying to, and it's a new role as well. So we were trying to determine what this role really looked like. We'd never taken a targeted approach. I actually have a colleague, he really focuses on the Northeast. We were looking at the Northeast and the Southeast as two regions where there's going to be a huge need. There's a lot of student athletes there, and making sure that those student athletes have all of the necessary information was important for us in those two regions. We would see how that works and then maybe go from there. So for me, pre-COVID, a day-to-day is just making connections. So I would be on the phone, calling, setting up visits. I would also be traveling a lot. So I would, maybe be traveling 2 to 3 times a month, going into the region into the region that I was serving, and having those conversations with the counselors face-to-face, maybe doing some presentations for a district, maybe speaking at some events that would be attended by by student athletes. Like just, being out there, really being a face for the NCAA and the NCAA's Eligibility Center was really what my day-to-day looked like beforehand. Post-COVID, I was actually in Tampa, Florida. I'll never forget, it was a Friday the 13th, right? Everybody remembers March 13th, 2020. I was in Tampa, meeting with Hillsborough County Athletic Department and their academics as well. And we got the call that, hey, we have to be taken off the road. So I came back home, and since then, my day-to-day has been really implementing some of the changes that have been put in place, and we can maybe talk about that later if we need to, some of the changes that were put in place due to everything that's gone on with COVID-19, but also, doing things like this, right? So we are fortunate enough, in these times to have the technology like Zoom or Microsoft Teams to still connect in some degree. I think that face-to-face interaction, you can't substitute that, but still having the ability to, be on the phone with these districts and still being that connection that they need whenever an issue comes up is what my day-to-day looks like now. So making a lot of calls, sending out a lot of emails, really connecting with those school districts, but then also whenever there's opportunity for connecting with these types of organizations like yours that are not necessarily a school district or a school, but are still serving that community, that's also important for me as well.
So you briefly went over one of my questions, but as far as the eligibility and the recruitment goes, what has changed as far as the requirements for that since COVID?
Yeah, so the requirements are all still the same. So if I was just describing them in normal times, a student would have to have 16 core courses. When you're talking core courses, you're talking those big ones. So like math, science, social studies, languages, those type of courses. They would have to take 16 of those. They would have to have at least a 2.3 GPA. They would have to have their proof of graduation. And then they would have to have a test score that corresponds to their GPA. So if you have a 2.3 GPA, that's going to be the lowest that we would accept. You would need a higher test score, and then it's an inverse relationship from there. So if you had a 3.3 GPA, you would need a little bit lower test score to be eligible. There was so much uncertainty around the availability of testing during, standardized testing during COVID-19. So we provided the flexibility that the test requirement is not going to be, it's not going to be there for the students who are going to be going into college next year. So the seniors right now, there's no test score requirement. But the standards themselves have not changed at all. It's still going to be the 16 core. They're still going to have to hit the GPA, still going to have to graduate, just no test score requirement. But one thing I will say about that test score requirement is it's not required for the NCAA, but there still are some schools, there still are some scholarship programs that might require that. So making sure that the students are working with the schools that are recruiting them or the scholarship programs that they're applying for, if they're not, if they're not going to get a full scholarship, if they're in one of those sports, that will be critical for those students. But as far as NCAA purposes, it's not a requirement.
Definitely. And I have another question for you, but I wanted to give a special shout out to one of my former alumni students, Mr. LaRon Scott, who's on tonight. So LaRon, thank you for tuning in, man. He's one of my first, he's helping us out now. He's one of our first kids we had in the program when I first started. And so now he's coming back to help us, and it's great to see you, man. So he can testify when we basically started this as far as kids. Over the years, we had kids that want to play college ball, and there's a lot of things that we didn't have. We had some kids that were good, some were not so good. And so this is definitely something we wish we would have had years back when we first started, when we had the program, because we had a lot of kids that were talented, but they just some things that they didn't have that they needed, when we started out. So LaRon, for yourself, we had talented guys back then, but just they were lacking in some things.
Absolutely. it's glad just to be back and, to be able to give back and still be a part of the organization, even though it's been many years ago. So that's what it's all about.
Awesome, awesome. And so Barrington, they come back to my next question. So what are some things that you see, I guess that's a weak spot for some, some of the kids that try to get into college sports? Like, what do you think something that definitely need to work on as far as something that you think people are lacking? I know you mentioned test scores, they're kind of waiving those scores, but what are some things you think folks need to focus on as far as if they want to play college sports, kind of something that people really kind of need to improve on as far as they start to kind of get into, college sports?
One thing I would think is start as early as possible with familiarizing yourself with the academic requirements. So, and that's part of why I was hired, was to make sure that those counselors know those requirements and know the importance of those requirements, especially for those students that are coming in, even as early as 8th grade or 9th grade, making sure that they're aware of those when they start forming their schedules for 9th grade, 10th grade. That's going to be important because, as you go on, it becomes harder and harder to maybe make up some of those courses. That's going to be an important one for sure. Also, just from a standpoint of like the whole student, an opportunity is an opportunity. If you have there's really not much difference between if you have, a Division I or Division II or Division III school that's recruiting you. If somebody is looking at you and they are offering you money to play college sports to help you earn an education, I think you should take that seriously no matter which division they're from. I know when I was coming through the process, I was so set, hey man, I want to play D1, I want to do this. That was my mindset. And looking back at it, especially those people that are on that fringe, maybe going to a Division II school where you're going to play a whole bunch, have maybe a better experience, that might be something that could be attractive as well. So just thinking about the long-term thing and not necessarily on the short term, I think is always going to be a good approach for students as they make their way through this process.
Awesome. So we talk a lot about what the students can do to play college sports, but I want to take it back to your job and what you do. So if someone was interested in your type of field and your job position, what education or experience would they need to work in a career like yours?
So for me, you would have to, I think being a former college athlete definitely helps. I can come on to this Zoom call and speak from personal experience. Hey, I kind of have been through this. I know how it works. I know some of the things that were some blind spots for me that maybe you should be looking out for. That's definitely, something that could help. It's not a necessity, but it's definitely something that can help. And then, I think we have 3 interns right here on the call. I think being willing to kind of make that sacrifice at the beginning of your career is going to be important. There's a lot of people that say, hey, I want to work in sports, or hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, but showing that you're willing to do it when, showing that you have the will to do that when, there's not going to be a huge salary or there's not going to be a lot of reward, again, today or tomorrow, but in the future, knowing that the experience that you're getting is going to compound, is going to really help you. So for me personally, I did do undergrad and then I went to grad school. Out of grad school, I kind of took like an internship at a Division I institution's athletic department. I worked at Georgia Tech for a year. And then from there, I really wanted to work at the NCAA. So I did actually another internship and took that at the NCAA. And then from there, it was, it kind of, you kind of pay your dues, and then, you're kind of next woman up, next man up, and then it's time to go from there. So definitely be willing to pay your dues. And again, thinking about that long term, where do you want to be in 5 years, I think will always be a good question to ask and kind of guide what you're doing today.
I think that's some very good advice. So while we are on the subject of your job, I want to know, what is the best part about it?
It's this. I get to interact with people for a living like that. As somebody who, I can do the 9 to 5 where I'm sitting behind the desk and all that. It's fine, don't get me wrong, but I really enjoy being out in the field, getting to interact with kids, getting to interact with parents, coaches, and really helping them. They're looking at me as a way to help them get to that next step. I'll never forget. So when like I said, I started the job about a year ago, and part of that job was going to camps, talking, to parents, interacting with them. We'd have a booth set up, they would come out there. I would get a chance to speak to the parents, while the camp was going on. And I just remember, being, in the stadium that we were in, and just like, wow, this is like really my job. I really get to, be out there, talk to people, interact with them. And, I wouldn't trade that for anything. That is what I really enjoy. And then the fact that I'm giving back at the same time, to a lot of groups that, are underrepresented in a lot of ways. Having that, that's something that I wouldn't trade for anything.
That's really refreshing to hear that's the best part. I want to ask about when you were talking about how you were an intern and all of that. Do you all offer internships for high school or college students?
So we offer the internship I did was a postgraduate internship. So it wouldn't be for somebody currently in high school. It wouldn't be for somebody currently in college. But if you graduate college, you can apply for that NCAA postgraduate internship program. And I think that even if you're a year out of graduating, or if you're a couple years out, I did it. I was a year out of graduating, so I graduated, spent a year at Georgia Tech, and then did it. So but I know just the track record of that internship. There's athletic directors right now. There's people working at the NFL. There's people who are affiliated with recruiting services, or all kinds of different opportunities that have come through that internship. And the one thing I will say about the postgraduate internship is they do put an emphasis on women and minorities. So I think it really, the goal of that is to get them into a position that will really vault them for the rest of their career.
I also had another question, going back again. When you talked about the test score requirements, what it might be kind of hard to explain. What's the process of changing or adding or removing requirements?
So the NCAA governance process. So you have the committee on academics that oversees these types of decisions. So if there's ever a need for something like that, it could be bubbled up through anybody really, a coaches association, a member institution, and the NCAA EC. There's committees that are tied to that as well. But if that idea comes up, then it's going to have to go through the committee on academics, which is comprised of administrators that work at the Division I and Division II institute and Division III institutions. So you're talking about like people who are on like the academic side of things. You're talking about like higher level administrators. Those types of people at the universities are going to be the ones that ultimately make that decision. Like a faculty athletics representative. So that's going to be like maybe a professor who is the one who kind of is a liaison between the academics and the athletics on a college's campus. So those will be, that body of people will make the decision, but the decision can kind of come up through anywhere. But yeah, that was something that was added this year. There is, obviously just seeing where that goes and, seeing what it looks like this year as we do see students come into the NCAA without that test score. Is that something that's necessary? Is that something that could change in the future? I think those are all questions that will be answered.
Definitely, man, definitely. And I guess my question would be for you is like, since everything's changed because of COVID, like the three divisions, like, you have Division I, Division II, Division III with NCAA, like how has sports changed among those three divisions since COVID has kind of taken over as far as the way sports is played right now?
Yeah, so Division I, especially at the, Division I had more sports that actually did play their season this year. So that led to there being a dead period in Division I. So a dead period means you can't have any in-person, face-to-face conversation or contact, on the school's campus or off the school's campus, like at a home visit or something like that. That's forbidden in Division I, and it has been since March of last year, and it's going to be, that dead period is going to be in place at least until April 15th of this year. Division II, on the other hand, did not have a dead period in place. They have a quiet period. So you can still, somebody who's being recruited by a Division II school could go to the Division II school and have face-to-face interaction. I think the fact that there wasn't many sports that were going on at the D2 level, kind of, there wasn't as much risk as far as bringing people to campus and what that could mean for the health and safety of the student athletes. So that was a rule that Division II felt was, hey, there wasn't as much risk for us. We can bring those students in. Division III is kind of interesting because it operates outside of the Eligibility Center. So we actually don't have any requirements for Division III. It's up to the school themselves to determine, things like admission, their academic requirements and that, and they're also along the same lines of Division II when it comes to recruiting. So there was just less risk for Division II and Division III, with Division I being in sports right now, but there was a little more risk. How that's going to play out is going to be interesting. Division I also passed the ability to potentially give an extra year of eligibility to some of their students. So, I think if you do have schools that take advantage of that, then perhaps, there might be less opportunities for high schoolers to go to a Division I. So you might see people look at a Division II school as maybe a better option during this time, or they might take a gap year in high school, which would allow them to revisit this next year. So these are all things, these are just ideas. I don't know if that's how it's going to play out. It's still up to the individual schools themselves to make that determination. But, this is just, just looking at it and seeing how it's going to play out. I think those will all be things to watch for.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And so we got about 5 minutes left. So any final thoughts or anything, any questions from anybody? Barrington, what's your final thoughts as far as anything you have for to say about anything else that we don't know? Basically, what's your final thoughts on everything?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting time, in a lot of ways in the world. There's the name, image, likeness stuff coming out there. I think that is something to look for and to see be resolved. Hopefully it's resolved this year. But we'll see where that goes. I think that's going to be, as a former student athlete, I think, I'm going to be really watching to see kind of what the Board of Governors and the NCAA as a whole and the membership, what decision or determination comes there. But that'll be something to watch for that's coming up this year. So other than that, like I said, I appreciate you all having me. I really like I said, this is the best part of my job, getting to meet new folks, getting to kind of interact. And if there's ever anything I can do in the future to help out for anything like this, or if you ever have an NCAA issue, you know, one of your friends or one of your kids or anybody like that, and you want to ask a question, you know, I don't have all the answers, but, you know, I do know people within the building that I could, you know, direct you to, and hopefully we can get your issue resolved. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you for joining us tonight, man. And like I said, I'll be talking with you soon about next steps. And so I think we're done. So, hey, good to talk to everybody. I will talk to you soon.
Peace.